The matter between Labour Minister Thulas Nxesi and the former Chairperson of Productivity SA and CEO of Tuja Capital, Mthunzi Mdwaba, will not be heard today in the High Court in Pretoria. The matter was scheduled for today. Nxesi filed an urgent court application in November for the court to set aside the R5 billion Tuja Capital Unemployment Insurance Fund job creation contract, also taking Mdwaba on over the allegations of corruption. This is over a deal between the UIF and the company that has been marred by R500 million bribery allegation brought by the businessman. SABC News reporter KATLEGO is actually standing by with Mthunzi Mdwaba. KATLEGO, good morning once again. You can go ahead with that conversation.
A very good morning to you, Eldrin, and to our viewers once again. As promised, we're getting a right of reply from Mr. Mdwaba just after we saw the ministry saying to us that really the delays as to why this court case is not sitting today is based on Mr. Mdwaba and his team not able to really more or less furnish the court with the papers, to submit their papers in time. Hence, we see this matter moved from today. It will now sit on the 2nd of February 2024 in this particular court. I have Mr. Mdwaba with me here who'll just give us a sense of really if indeed this delay is coming from your end. We've seen the minister really being upbeat about wanting to get to the bottom of this particular contract. He approached the court on an urgent basis for this matter to be set aside, and we're still here. It's not moving, and he's saying that the delays are from your end. Welcome to the SABC.
Thank you, and thank you for having us. Good morning, good day to everybody. So, it's very easy for a minister who's busy abusing state resources and abusing court processes to point fingers at people. So let me tell you, you'll recall that last year we were here. When we were here last year, he asked for what is called case management, which is sort of an expedited process of running through the case, which was granted. I was interviewed by yourselves. I gave the draft order. It said we're coming back to court today. But in between, there's a lot of things that were to happen. They were waiting for some of the respondents to respond. In fact, the UIF, as the 8th respondent, responded about 3 weeks ago, I think it was, with something that was about 500 pages, which today, last night, they are withdrawing paragraph 10 of the original affidavit, another 400 pages or so, just to withdraw. And that paragraph 10, just so you know, was them saying that they want to review the decision by the UIF to recommend the contract. Now they are withdrawing that. So the question you must ask yourself is, why then would you withdraw a UIF recommendation to approve my contract by the DG Lamati who has left, unless something is smelling funny? That's point number one. Point number two, some of those intermittent things that should have happened is that we were to be given certain information. So we've asked for, you'll remember the much discussed forensic investigation report, which was given to Sabelo Skiti of the Sunday World. He's the only person in South Africa who was given this somehow by the minister, all right, and his people. And no one else has this. Parliament hasn't seen it, the UIF board hasn't seen it, and is refusing to give it to us. And yet everything he talks about in the application is based on this forensic report, right? Even I was removed as the chairman of Productivity SA in September last year on the basis of this report, because he says in paragraph 5 of his letter of the 11th of September that he is removing me because of this report, because it says I have a conflict of interest and the many other things that came up in this report. But the very report he's refusing to give to us. We've also asked for annexures to the Director General's report. So the Director General did a report before the forensic investigation report. The Director General, who's now left, Thobile Lamati, you will remember he was interviewed by Citizen, and he said every time he asked for the report, the minister would say he was discussing with Cyril Ramaphosa, the state president, and he would keep on umming and not telling him what is happening with that report. Now that they've attached that report to the founding affidavit, but all the annexures are not there. So how can you have a report, but where you have the verification, it's not there? Why? They tell us that they are protecting certain people. Who are you protecting? But more importantly, something that has also come up to us is that there's a legal opinion in there, okay, by an advocate who is leading the process for them. So the very advocate In fact, the story was covered in Sunday World, quite interestingly. Sunday World made all kinds of allegations as to why there were certain people writing opinions and doing certain things to create a case that is just endless, right?
So you're basically saying the delay is not from your end, the delay is from the department side, hence this matter is not sitting today.
The delay is dirty games. The delay is they are playing very dirty games. How do you wait for 12 months, my dear brother? 12 months waiting for a forensic investigation to be finished. And everybody tells you there's a forensic investigation that is going to get to the bottom of how you got this contract, which we say was valid. It was done properly. And then you refuse to give us that forensic report. So the delay is theirs. It's created by them. But they are manipulating things because, you know, when you've got state resources, you can abuse things. You've got all this money. That is not your money that you keep using. This is state money, and all we want us is to create the over 700,000 jobs that we got a valid contract for. That's it.
What do you say then to those allegations that this was a clear conflict of interest? You were the chairperson of Productivity SA, and then at the same time the CEO of Tuja Capital, and that's where then Tuja Capital will be roped in by Productivity SA through the UIF to come and provide services here. Doesn't that spell a conflict of interest?
I'm saying I've addressed this before, that there is no conflict of interest. In fact, I've given detail why it's not a conflict of interest. At best, that allegation that it's a conflict of interest is incompetence. It's incompetence. At worst, is pure lies and evil. It's the dirty tricks that have been played on this matter for over a year. That's all I'm saying.
Were you going to basically serve as the...
No.
How is it going to work?
Okay, so then let me explain it to you again, because I've explained it so many times. So first of all, it's not serving again. There's no conflict in the sense that my role as the chair of Productivity SA is of an entity that has its own board. Okay? So it falls under the Department of Employment and Labour in terms of custodianship. But it has its own board, its own processes. We have nothing to do with what happens in the Department of Employment and Labour. We have nothing to do with what happens at UIF. We have nothing to do with what happens at Compensation Fund, at any of the entities within the... That's point number one. Point number two, when the adjudication happens about anything, we don't even know who's doing it. We don't even know where they are sitting. We don't even know what they're talking about. That's the second thing. The third thing, from a business point of view, as a businessman, what I did, even though the mandate... Okay, the third thing is the mandate of Productivity SA is to contribute to the creation of employment, is to contribute to stemming the tide of retrenchments in the workplace. That's what it does. So it intervenes and it comes up with ways of making sure that we keep people employed. Tuja, however, has created what we refer to as the parallel universe ecosystem to create the employment physically on the ground by making sure there's intensive job application and very sustainable jobs for over 700,000 jobs, right? It has nothing to do with the other. At best, it would be collaborative and complementary. Fourthly, as a businessman, just because I wanted to, what I did was actually declare, because you know every board meeting you're asked, do you have something to declare? So even when I was still planning it, I declared, right? And my board said, what are you declaring? One of my board members, by the way, is a woman called Masha Broncos, to the CEO of the Department of Employment and Labour, because she also sits on my board. She was part of asking, what are you declaring? I said, I'm declaring because there will be some working relationships. I think it's just, good business governance to do it like that, right? They said, no, you come report to us when there's something happening. I went the second time. What I did the second time, they even took it to the Audit and Risk Committee, to the ARC, right? Why? Because one of the things I suggested was that I want to fund Productivity SA. Why? Because this very minister has failed to fund Productivity SA, even after being told by Parliament that he must fund Productivity SA. Productivity SA is always short of a budget. They always return hundreds and hundreds of millions to Treasury because their friends like me, who they can't give money to, 500 million or whatever, are not there. So they return the money. So I was going to fund it. So they wanted to look as an audit committee whether it's possible for me to actually fund an entity. They came back, the audit committee, which in its committee, the committee itself, the acting chair, Annelin Chetty from the Department of Trade and Industry, who's also on my board, was in that committee. They came back and they said, no, sharp, he can give money. Actually, the Constitution allows us. Second time. Then they said, you come back and tell us when more is now happening, when it's like really ripe. And when the DG approved it, I went back to the board. I said, the DG's now approved it. As a board, you said you want to talk to me again. Let me again tell you, now we are at a point where we're negotiating to do the contracts. Eventually, when the contract was done on December 18, 2022, 2022, 2023, 2022, I had already told them this again. So this conflict of interest thing is based out of pure vendetta by Nxesi looking for anything he can find to deal with me. This is a personal matter by Nxesi, but what he won't tell us is what is it? Did I slaughter a sheep I shouldn't have slaughtered a makaya? What did I do? Did I mess up somebody in the family? But it's pure vendetta, nothing to do with law.
Yeah, if I can come in there before I let you go, Mr. Mdwaba, we know that again there were issues of whether there was a bidding process where this particular case is concerned, and more or less others wanting to know really the nitty-gritties also in terms of when was Tuja Capital formed, the company, because now there are also that the company was formed just before this particular process. Hence, it was the only company that was awarded with this particular contract. What do you say to that? And are you confident in this particular matter that's sitting here in the court?
So again, I have to repeat myself because these are old questions I've answered many times at SABC, at ENCA, everywhere. Okay, very, very pedantically I've done that. Let me do it again. So Tuja Holdings is the one that's in court. Okay, there was Tuja Capital that was registered in 2019 when we submitted a bid, okay, to be in the process like everybody else. That was Tuja Capital. But Tuja Holdings is made up of 8 sectors of the economy. Tuja Capital belongs to the finance element. When after a few iterations that we'd had internally within Tuja, and after meeting with the IDC, and I'm not going to go into the IDC now, that by the way said they love us. They said our idea of Tuja resonates with them. I even have a letter like that, but nobody wants to talk about this letter, right? What we then did was to see, no man, Tuja Capital belongs to finance. I don't think it's smart for us to do everything as Tuja Capital. Then when we implement, we then have to restructure everything, because now we must take the 8 sectors. Let me tell you quickly: agriculture, aquaculture, renewable energy, property and construction, telecoms, media, broadcasting and fiber, arts, culture, sport, health, pharmaceuticals, and financial sector. So we decided only in December we're going to register Tuja Holdings, right, and reverse everything into Tuja Holdings that are Tuja Capital. And we notified the department. We wrote to them. We said, you know what? We've just registered Tuja Holdings because it is the right vehicle as a holding company. Tuja Capital will still be there as a subsidiary, but nobody's listening. Right?
Was there bidding, Mr. Mdwaba, before I let you go?
There was bidding, there was rigorousness, there was robustness, there was a process. This process took 4 years, my dear brother. 4 years. Okay, there was also the COVID, so that's nobody's fault. Okay, it took 4 years. Now it's taking a 5th year, 13 months after it should have been implemented on the 31st of January. I'm standing here with you in the sun burning to explain nonsense. This is absolute nonsense.
They're outstanding papers. That's why this matter could not get on today. Are you confident that you're going to meet that deadline?
Not only confident, I'm confident of a win. This is a win, and they know it. They're scared. They are running scared, all of them. We're going to win so big, but we win for South Africa, not for us, because we must create this over 700,000 jobs and more.
Mr. Mdwaba, thank you very much, sir.
It's a real pleasure.
For your time, Mr. Mdwaba, coming through there as the CEO of Tuja Capital, of course.
Tuja Holdings.
Tuja Holdings, that is where we find ourselves here today. We're really upbeat about the case, saying that they're going to meet the deadline here in terms of submitting those papers on the 29th of January, but also this matter will get underway on the 2nd of February. He's maintaining his innocence, saying that there's a personal vendetta here with the minister, and saying that the proof will be ventilated here in the courts. Eldrin, back to you in studio.